listeners. We are very excited to have a special guest with us today on Latch-Key Dads. Our guest has some massive inventions on his resume, including the creation of Twister and the original Nerf ball. Today we welcome Reyn Guyer. Reyn, thanks so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us.
Not a problem.
So I'll get it started if you don't mind. So Twister, amazing. Can you share us a little behind the scenes of how it came to be?
Well, I was running a business that my father had started, and I had kind of begun to take the reins of the company in 1963. And it was a company that we designed display materials that held products for Fortune 500 companies in supermarkets and drugstores and at the end aisle. And they would have special spot for these end aisle displays. And we designed and developed the displays for people. Fortune 500 companies in the Midwest. And we were doing so moderately successfully. However, I kept looking for other ideas that might augment what we were already doing. I had a few glitches on the way, and pizza was just coming in. We could have I called it Pizza in the Round, and it got fairly far down the line till I realized I didn't know anything about restaurants or food or purchase thereof or the sale thereof. And I decided that's a whole industry that I wasn't going to get into, and kept looking for ideas. And one day I was working on an idea for one of my clients who had a shoe polish that they wanted to make a display and a promotion out of. And so I thought, well, if we could do one of those, send $1 and the label of the product to you will get. Let's see. So I started noodling around, penciling in kind of what if we had a little piece of cardboard that we put squares on it and people could step on it and walk on it. And all of a sudden I just kind of sat back in my chair and said, okay, time out. This idea could be a lot bigger than what I just sketched. And I went out in the bullpen being the area where all the artists are working. And I pulled out a 6x4 sheet of corrugated board. That's what they make boxes out of. And I drew 4 1-foot squares. I did 24 of them, 4 by 6. In other words, they were going one way, there were 4 squares. Going the other way, there were 6 squares.
Sure.
And then I conscripted 8 people, including some of the artists and some of the people who were in money management and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I somehow came up with 8 people that were willing to, sure, Wren, yeah, we're going to got a nuclear in here. And I gave each team of 2 a color, red, blue, yellow, and green. And we put those little circles around their necks. And one of the players would then start at the corner of the mat as they were standing on it. And when it was their turn, they would move to a square next to them if it was open. And if there were 8 people on the board, that meant that all of the squares weren't open. And it meant you could block somebody else if it's your turn. There were several things you could do. So we started to play, and the objective was let's see if somebody can get to the diametric opposite end of the game board by the time the game's over. And of course, that lasted about a minute and a half, and people started laughing so hard that it was chaos. And I knew right then that the game will not work. The game was showing me one thing, that people on a board standing on the floor together, bumping into each other, meant fun. F-U-N, fun, just plain fun. So the long road there was developing a game that I took to 3M, who had a game division, but theirs was pretty intellectual stuff. And the game I invented had people trying to block each other's way across what was essentially a tic-tac-toe, trying to get 4 in a row. And it was a good game, and it worked. But I didn't have any familiarity with the industry. And so one day, a fellow by the name of Chuck Foley was trying to sell our purchasing agent some printing that we needed. He was working for a silkscreen printing company, and he saw the game that I had developed in the corner and said, "What's that?" Our guy said, "Oh, well, that's a game Wren has been fiddling with. It's he does that, you know." And the guy said, "Well, I've been in the toy and game business," and he had worked for a local game company. And the short of it is, I ended up hiring Chuck Foley and a gentleman by the name of Ravens. And the two of them began to work with me to develop some ideas that would relate to people being the players on a mat. And we developed about 8 ideas. They really covered a broad spectrum, from little kids' games to intellectual games to alphabet games to. But one of them, which then looked pretty much like what a Twister game looks like now, with we had a bunch of dots on the mat, and Chuck Foley said, "Let's put those dots in a row." And then Gene Rabin said, "What happens if we can get on this mat with hands and feet?" And that changed drastically. And between the 3 of us, we began to formulate what was the rules to what became Twister. And we took that to Milton Bradley. We took all 8 games to Milton Bradley. And of course, the one thing that stood out for the gentleman who was in charge of buying new ideas, his name is Mel Taft. And Mel Taft saw the merit in the Twister-like game, and they decided that they'd try to put it on the market and call it Pretzel. But they found that didn't work because there was already a product that had Pretzel as part of the name. So they backed off and called it Twister, much to my dismay. I Twisters, as far as someone living in the Midwest is concerned, twisters are dangerous and deathly dangerous. And so the name Twister for a fun, light product was not on my list of approved behavior at the time. But they did, and they started to put it on the market. When they did, one of their largest sellers of their products, a retailer by the name of Sears, had a large catalog of toys that every kid in the country knew by heart. And they decided to put the Twister game in their part of the of that catalog, or even in their stores. And so Mel Taft at Milton Bradley called.
If I may ask, Ren, why did they not? Were you given a reason?
Yes, they felt it was a little bit too risque. It was a lot of people being very close to each other, which was in the back in the 60s, was not as looked at on as lightly as it would be now.
Sure.
And
That's so interesting.
they backed off for that reason. And Mel Taft called me. It was just before Christmas, and said, "Sorry, Wren, we're pulling it. We're pulling all of the spot ads. We are not going with the product. If we can't get our major sales retailers to go along with us, it's not going to work." Unbeknownst to anybody else in the Milton Bradley organization, and myself included, Mel Taft had already paid. Mel Taft, being Milton Bradley, through Mel Taft, had already paid a sales promotion group. And they had managed to get Johnny Carson to agree to put the game on in his show. So when it came time to do that, actually Mel Taft and the PR agent were both in the audience in New York at the show, as they knew that was coming up. And Mel Taft was, to his great credit, taking one last shot at maybe someone will like this game. And sure enough, Johnny Carson's guest that night was Ava Gabor, who incidentally wore her usual low-cut gown with the spiky heels, and she was a very beautiful human being, and she encouraged Johnny. She got down on the floor and said, "Come on, John." And John decided, finally acquiesced, and got on the floor with his shoes on, of course. But he and she played a quasi game of Twister. And the next morning at Abercrombie and Fitch in New York, there were 50 people standing in line because they had heard that there were still some Twister games that hadn't been returned to Milton Bradley. And that did change the view of Milton Bradley as to what they had and what the possibilities were. And it did go on to be the game of the year that year, and in the toy and the game industry. And so on it went.
That is a great story. That is just an amazing opportunity. It must have been crazy to see Johnny Carson and Eva Gabor playing your game on television.
Well, I didn't know that they were doing that. Because Mel had told nobody, anybody in his management, because he wasn't going to stick his neck out. He played it pretty cool. He was a wonderful man. He is a wonderful man, and longtime friend, and confidant, and we've shared a lot of stories.
That's truly amazing.
Yeah.
You know, Twister is such an iconic game. You know, everybody knows it. I played it as a kid. My kids have played it. And I'm sure it's been mentioned or featured in hundreds of TV shows and movies at this point. Are you surprised how long the game has lasted in American pop culture?
Am I surprised? I'm always surprised. Yes, surprised and appreciative of the fact that we got lucky. Lucky. That's what it is.
That's amazing. In addition to inventing, I know you're an illustrator as well. I illustrate, and I've always been interested in the inspiration behind illustrations. Did you illustrate the box on Twister, or were you involved in the?
No. Milton Bradley would have done, could have done a lot better than me. They managed to do a good job and did kind of cartoon characters when they first started, and it worked very well, and they got it across. I do with naming it or putting art on the box.
Well, it's still it's kind of stood the test of time, and certainly something that when anyone sees it these days, they immediately know what it is. So it's very cool. This seems like a good spot for us to take a little break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. So after Twister, you decided to go out on your own, correct? And start your own company?
Yeah, I decided after that Twister had run about a year and a half that I really did not want to spend the rest of my life trying to make a success of the company that my father had started, that I never did understand the mathematics of it. I didn't know how to get it so that we had some kind of a longevity with a product. Every year we would have to come up with a new idea for somebody's display, and we were competing with other people. And there was no, well, you did a good job last year. It was like, well, what you got for us this year? And so we were, it was a hand to mouth. I couldn't figure out a way to do anything other than that until we had come up with the Twister concept. And I liked what that was doing more than what our company was doing. And so I sold out of that. I sold it back to some of the employees and my father, and they went on with it. They subsequently sold it to a printing company, a local printing company. Anyway, I went on, yes, and within the building that I had purchased for the company that my father had started and I was running, I had purchased a building that had a lot of extra room in it. It was an old warehouse, and I took some of that space and built rooms where and hired 5 people, 4 originally, and ultimately 5 people, and there were 6 of us. And one of the rooms had all of us in the room in a circle, a large circle. It was a big room, and it had our drawing boards and with our drawing equipment nearby, and that's how we kept in touch with each other and kept our ideas alive.
Now, was that something you had experienced before, working in a circle like that, or was that something you had come up with?
I had been involved in training, team training with a friend of mine who was a team trainer, and he actually got me to be part of his team doing some of the training, and I did it with him. So yes, I was familiar with the ethic, the concept of being open and sharing ideas, which it seems ludicrous, but that is, for me, that's the essence of the game. Any idea business.
From a creative standpoint, I think that ability to see each other and feed off of each other and create those, those concepts out of thin air that would become, future games. And I worked in an environment similar to that, where it was in a circular environment, but not knowing that, way back in the late 60s, early 70s, you were doing that same thing. It's pretty amazing.
Well, it was working pretty well and we were at it for about a year and a half, and we were having not any signal successes. And one of the gentlemen decided that he had an idea for a game where kids would walk around on these pieces of flat plastic on the floor that looked like a rock. And so it was kind of a dinosaur age game, and everybody was encouraged to, have a little, we call script, or there were tokens, and then you could hide your tokens. And if somebody landed on the rock or tried to steal some of those, we have a way to stop them, as we were all walking around in a big circle on these rocks. And needless to say, the game did not play well. He came up with, there was some packing material. He cut up a bunch of rough black rocks made out of foam, and everybody had one. And we started, if someone was going to steal money from underneath the rock, they could throw these rocks at the person. And it was a stupid game, and it didn't go well. But one of the guys took some of the rocks and started bouncing them over a net we had nearby. And we all just kind of stopped and said, okay, time out. We're going somewhere else here. And we all went to our tables, and we got a hold of some different types of foam, and we started cutting out balls with scissors. And I still have one of them, one of the early prototypes that we made. Soon after using scissors to make balls, we discovered that there was already a method by which you could cut foam with a hot knife. And so it was easy to see how quickly we could turn that hot knife. If you have a long piece of wire and you make a bump in it that's about a half of a circle, and then you rotate that in the bun of foam, it comes out like a ball. And so we developed probably 8 or 10 ideas that centered around the foam. And we took it to Milton Bradley, and they thought about it for quite a while, and then said, we are a game and puzzle company, but we're not getting into toys. And so we took it to Parker Brothers. And unfortunately, at the time, Parker Brothers decided that they'd like to come out with a NERF ball. They called it NERF. And they made a NERF ball. And they did. They started making NERF balls and putting them in little boxes. And we said, no. Well, we did sign a contract that said, yes, I guess that's what you want to do. Yes, you can do it, but we don't think you're going very far with that. Well, we were wrong. And we had other ideas, fortunately, behind that, and they could see the merit of, oh, okay, so this is a multi-product line. And from there, I need say no more. It is what it is.
And you mentioned that there were other products. Were there any that you had developed that have never, since that early development of the Nerf ball, that have never actually made it to the public? Are there any that never were made?
No, I don't think so.
Not what I expected.
At one point, we had a line of soft Nerf vehicles that, unfortunately, they discovered once they got them on the market and they were selling very well, that they little kids would get them in their mouth and they chew on them, and when they chew on them, the foam would come loose in their mouth. And that
Sure.
was,
you had mentioned that you have one of the original Nerf ball prototypes. I was just curious, has the Smithsonian Institute inquired about obtaining it?
oh, people ask me that a lot. No, nobody has.
Oh, shocking.
Who knows? Someday it may end up in somebody's museum. Who knows?
Now you mentioned taking the products to Milton Bradley and Parker Brothers. I'm just curious, back in that time frame, were the insides of those buildings more corporate, or did it have sort of a fun, playful toy feel to it? What was it like walking into those corporate buildings back then?
No, they were struggling for their lives at that point. They were not big monster companies, and quite frankly, Twister doubled the size of Milton Bradley. So they were a bunch of working dudes, and they were trying to find products and make products. Parker Brothers had a monopoly that has since then kept them alive forever.
It's pretty amazing, that you mentioned that Twister kind of doubled their size, so I guess they have a lot of thanks to give to you. That's
well, I have to say, I hope it's apparent from what I've described that there was a team that we pulled together, and it was underwritten actually by my father, who saw the merit in the idea of people being the players. And that was the essence of what we were working with, trying to develop products that had people being the players in the game board or the exercise or whatever it was. And it takes a team. Anybody that tells you that it all happens all by ourselves, no, it doesn't. There are too many people involved in the development of a success. You can always find several people who all did their part. Foley, Chuck Foley, and Neil Ravens were a very, very excellent part of our team. And my father's underwriting the project was a very important part. Milton Bradley's work with Mel Taft was unbelievable. I mean, Mel Taft stuck his neck out, and it paid off for them wonderfully. And he was always that kind of a guy. He just, if he saw something that's going to work, he's going to make it work. So it takes a lot of people.
Yeah, it's tremendous example of how, when people come together and there's that magic of, I was watching a video and you talk about the what happens if moment, and it sounds like there were some of those moments along the way where someone took a chance and something amazing did happen by following that methodology that you've talked about of what happens if.
That sounds like a lot of Mickey Mouse, but I have encouraged this in all of my teams, and to this day, people who are a part of the teams that we put together are encouraged to use the phrase in front of a proposal. What would happen if? What would happen if? Takes care of a lot of, well, what would happen before, what would happen after, what would happen during, what would happen if? That question over and over, it opens up everything. It doesn't leave it to somebody saying, I had this idea, which usually closes down the conversation. So what would happen if?
That's some great advice.
This seems like a good spot for us to take a little break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
So we know that you certainly are not resting on your laurels, and you have a new project that you're working on.
I do have a project that I am working on. It's called My Friend Wren. It's not spelled the way I spell my name, which is Reyn. The project is called My Friend Wren, Wren, like the bird. And it is a compilation of stories and songs that I have written over the years. Back in the late 80s, one of the writers for our music company in Nashville, my daughter and I had started a company in Nashville, hires or puts writers under contract, and we take the product that they're writing and put it in front of some of the major artists in Nashville. And so that's a company that we have had going for quite a while, since '85, my daughter and I. It's called Wren Song Music, and we're right on Music Row and blah, blah, blah. But the music that I put together of stories and songs came about from a writer by the name of Jeff Harrington, who had joined the Wren Song staff, and he and I began to work on kids stuff. And over the years, he and I have written. I do the lyrics and I do the vocals, and he does the music essentially. And Jeff and I have written a lot of stories and songs for kids. And at one point we had them out in the late 80s, back when everybody had tapes in their cars. They were listening to tapes in their cars. And we put together 6 car tapes. We called them Curly Lasagna's car tapes.
It's a great name.
Curly was the singer, i.e. me. And we had enough material for 6 different tapes. People coming up to me every once in a while saying, where in the world do I get a hold of those Curly Lasagna car tapes? I grew up with them. We put them on every time we got in the car, which is exactly what we hoped would happen. Unfortunately for us, it didn't happen enough. We didn't sell that many, but we sold a few thousand of them, and people still come up and say, hey, Wren, where's it? So a lot of the material that was Curly Lasagna's car tapes, some of that has been the essence or the heart of the new project that we have called My Friend Wren, which is online right now. It's you can either go www.myfriendwren.com, and then you'll pull up the website. And we're about to do a whole new fancy new website. Or you can go on YouTube and pull up My Friend Wren, W-R-E-N, and you will come upon about 12 to 14 videos of the songs and stories that we're putting up. We're still adding to it. We hope to have a whole line of, well, not hope to, we have a whole line of stories and songs. And now we're in the throes of getting help from some people we have hired to help get this out in front of everybody. We, for instance, have a song called Jamazon, which, quite frankly, in 3 years, we hope that that will be the go-to song for kids and parents when it's time to go to bed. It's pretty easy. It's the hook on it is, gotta get your jammies on, jammies on, jammies on. Gotta get your jammies on. You got to get to bed. It's that simple. And there's a whole song that goes with it. All of the stories and songs are, well, I invite you to take a look. We're essentially saying these products are a little bit more thorough. They're not light and you just listen to them for a minute and then go on to something else. These are actually stories, some of them 6 to 8 minutes long, and they seem to be holding the attention of our initial audience, which is kids. We have 2 categories: the 3 to 5 category, age category, and then the 5 to 8 category. And we have songs and stories for each one of those areas of demographic. We're into it. We if you go on, you'll see where we have quite a few subscribers, and we have almost all of the stories and songs have over 100,000 views so far. So we're making progress.
That's great. I had checked it out, Wren. I went to both myfriendwren.com as well as your YouTube channel, and they're really fun songs and stories. But my favorite, I think, was Albert Day. That was my favorite of the ones that I had seen. It was really very interesting.
Well, we're making books out of, we already have a book called Albert Day, Where Have You Been? And we will have books for almost all of the stories and songs. We have 3 already printed, and we're just going to keep on doing this. And the objective is to, near the end of this year, put a pretty good push on it. And maybe in 3 years we'll have you'll know, or most people will know, who My Friend Wren is because of the stories and songs that accompany him.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and in addition to obviously the songs and the stories, the graphics and illustrations that you accompany the the songs with are quite wonderful. I really enjoyed just that graphical element and the illustrations as well. So it's a lot that I think the kids can enjoy from both a visual and audio standpoint.
And my role in those illustrations has been one of the art director, rather than being. I honestly wouldn't have the time to do all the art for that is necessary. So we have been working with the artists at Kid Shannon in New York, who have a large staff of signed illustrators for kids stuff and anything that needs an illustration. And there are some wonderfully talented artists in it, and we've been using several of them.
Well, I think, true to your earlier point of having a good team, in any endeavor that you do, I think you've assembled a great team again, and you've got a great product.
We have high hopes for it. We have just brought on board a team that is the group that I think almost everybody in the USA knows what Yeti is.
Sure, yeah.
The product Yeti.
Yeah.
That is now taken over the ice chest world.
Yeah.
And gone on to have a whole shelf of Yeti products in hardware stores. It's like, So we're working with that group, and they see a lot of promise in the My Friend Wren possibility. So there again, we're working with some pretty good people.
That's fantastic. I'm enjoying some tea out of a Yeti tumbler as we speak. So. Awesome. Well, I just want to say thank you again, Wren, for taking the time to talk with us today on Latch-Key Dads, and for all the enjoyment that your inventions have brought to us, our families, millions around the world.
Millions.
It's truly an amazing story, and we're very thankful that you are willing to come on with us today. And we wish you nothing but continued success with My Friend Wren and everything else that you will bring to us in the future.
It's a great pleasure, and I appreciate the opportunity to be with you. So good luck to you and all of your endeavors.
Awesome. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Happy day, boys. Nice to talk to you.
Same here.
Same. Thanks. Bye.
Tim, did you know that listeners should like, review, and subscribe to the Latch-Key Dads podcast?
No. But now I know. Knowing is half the battle.